Second here, and I think we are good to go. Okay, so Ryan, you're in Phoenix currently, is that correct?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, and tell me a little bit. I see you are employed. Why are you seeking a new practice opportunity?
So the practice is being sold. So, home base is here in Phoenix. I fly back and forth to the office every week now, and I've done that for years. So I was just kind of wanting something a little bit closer, to Phoenix. And,
Where are you
just
flying from?
so it's in Indiana is the practice where Biltmore is at. So,
Wow. Okay.
yep.
Well, that's not convenient, is it?
Well, it's what I signed up for, so it's not something that I can say I could blame anyone other than myself for that.
Sure.
But
Sure.
but no, it's been good. It's currently underway with being sold.
Yeah. I gotta
So
I gotta ask, that's really interesting. Like I said, I've been doing this a long time. I don't often find providers that commute that distance and do so successfully for a long period of time. And you've been there for what, almost 4 years?
yeah,
Is that right? I
that's
mean,
right.
I'd say I see most people try to pull something off like that for 12 months,
Yeah.
and then bail because it's too much, right? It's too
Right.
much time, it's too much money, whatever. But and of course, I know you have ties to Indiana. That's where you achieved your master's. But
Right.
um, I want to take a step back. Why did you take that in the first place? I mean, I imagine you have your pick of the litter.
To be honest, a lot of jobs nowadays, the very first guy that I worked for many years ago for 10 years, it was a private practice dermatologist. He was laid back. I guess you could say I got spoiled or used to the way of doing business with him. It was just, he gave me a lot of autonomy. It was a fun work environment. He basically was like, hey, you can make the kind of income you want to make based on how hard you're willing to work. They had a lot of volume. It was just, everything just really went well. It was really enjoyable. The only reason I ever left there is because, he said, hey, I want to start slowing down towards retirement. So when that happened, I had to kind of start looking. And at that time, I was ready for a change of pace from Indiana. So that's when I
Mm,
came to, Arizona, trying to find the same fit. So to
sure.
answer your question about why this opportunity, I was trying to find that same type of setup like what I'd had. A lot of firms now are owned by private equities. So not all, but a lot of them, there's a cap, with your earnings. There's also, it's not the same setup. There's a lot of micromanaging. You don't really have a lot of the autonomy. You
Mm,
struggle to get the patient volume. There's a number of things that are just completely different than what it was when you're dealing, with the experience that I had. So this
mm,
one, it was an opportunity to have, autonomy. It was kind of the same setup as like what I had originally. So that's what
sure.
attracted me to it. And for me, I've always sought out the opportunity as opposed to having to stay necessarily in one set geographic area,
Mm,
as long as everything makes sense. It has to make
sure.
sense, but
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and there are plenty of like-minded people, right? Where, ultimately the practice opportunity is the draw, not the location itself. So, but life doesn't always allow that,
right.
So let me make sure I understand. So you're, because of your resume here, you had a long stint at Hudson Dermatology from '03 to 2013.
Yep.
And um that's the position you said you really liked because of the autonomy?
Yeah. Just the
Okay.
whole setup. But yeah, that's the one.
Okay. Okay. Um, and then after that, you went to Alliance for, what is that, a year
Yep.
ish?
Yep.
Okay. And what happened at Alliance?
At Alliance, good guy, it's just, uh, at the time, it was just, again, there's a cap with what you can, see. And a lot of practices as they're getting more physicians on board, and they like to see a lot of patients. I mean, those guys are seeing 70, 80 people, a day themselves. So
Yeah,
there's not a lot of extra, to see,
sure.
and,
Yeah,
you know,
that's crazy, man.
you know,
I don't know how they maintain that pace. That's wild.
hey, they're hustlers. So
Yeah, yeah, I guess so. So Alliance was that another a private equity based or franchise type practice,
no,
or
no,
no?
no, it was
They
just,
they they just didn't have a lot left over for you essentially.
yep. So,
Why did they hire you if they're already kind of doing their own thing?
well, I think, I mean, there is a limit to what they can see. And,
Sure.
I'm sure if they wanted to have, who doesn't want to have more revenue and have
Mm,
some help when you want to go on things? So, I mean, there's the reasons there, but I think,
sure.
there's a difference between somebody that wants to see, you know, 25, patients a day and one that wants to see more. And,
Mm,
you know,
okay. Fair enough. And then from there, you went to Dermatology Associates of Indy, and I'm assuming that's in Indianapolis.
it's in Evansville, Indiana.
Oh,
So yeah,
Evansville.
it's just
Well,
the,
that's a little further south, isn't it?
yeah.
I've
Yeah,
been to Evansville. I know where that is on a map.
yep, yep, that's right.
Okay. And what happened there?
That one, oh, are you there?
Yeah, I'm still here. My camera's been acting weird this week. I'm sorry.
Oh,
Or
no
today,
problem.
rather.
Um, that practice was, a dermatologist and a pharmaceutical executive that I knew that, was opening a group of practices, throughout the country. They wanted to open one, there. So I knew each of them for a long time. They reached out to me. They said, "Hey, we know you want to, be busy, and you've got your background as also being a, director of clinical operations too. So this would be a nice fit because there's a lot of autonomy. It's a new practice. We'd like to kind of
Hmm,
bring you on board." And since I had worked, there in Evansville for 10, years,
right.
it just made sense. So they said, "Hey, we know Evansville isn't a city that you want to live long term because you've already been there, but you know it, and you could be a good fit for us to get this off the ground and going until we could, open another location."
Mm,
So I came in and got it going. They've got the, everything set, got the provider, there later on when it was time to go on to the next thing. And,
mhm.
it was a success, and it's still open today. So,
Okay. Okay. Um, so your role there was successful, right? You achieved all the marks.
yeah.
That again seemed like a relatively short stint. Why did you leave there?
I met the goals that they wanted, to get the practice opened, get it, set up, established, going, and
Okay.
then go
And
on to the next.
now they already knew you didn't want to be there long term, right? Based on
Right.
your comments. Did
Yep.
you think it was going to be a relatively short term type assignment, or were you
Yeah, I
expecting
mean,
a longer?
no, it was exactly what I expected that to be.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Excellent. And then that after that, you brought you to Arizona, right?
yep.
Okay. And that practices in Phoenix proper, or
It was in Gilbert, but yeah, basically the suburbs of Phoenix.
yep. Yeah, I'm familiar with Gilbert. I've got a client that I don't know if you know who Sun Life Family Health is or not.
Mm.
Okay, they run a number of FQHCs throughout Phoenix, and some of
Oh,
them actually are quite south down into oh god, now I can't even think Casa Grande and way down there, so south of the city. But they've even got one way down outside of Tucson, an old mining community. But anyways, um, so that brings us back to Biltmore, which is all the way up in Indiana,
yeah.
and you're explain to me the commute. How does that work exactly?
I just, fly back and forth each week, and then, Indianapolis is where I stay, and then just
Hmm,
to make the drive, and a lot of
okay.
frequent flyer miles. So
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. How's that been during COVID times?
it was interesting. It started out, there was half a dozen flights, that there were about 9 of us on the whole plane. Went from weird times of meals to saying, here, take as many as you want, to
Yeah.
we don't offer any of that, to,
Mm,
hey, you don't have to wear a mask, to you better not step on here without a mask,
sure.
to everything in between. And
Yeah.
it was an interesting time, but it's something that, hey, people still got to get from point A to point B, and I don't see
Absolutely.
those going away anytime soon.
Yeah.
So
I'm assuming you saved some money on airfare for a while.
yeah, there were actually a good number of months there. I was getting some pretty good deals,
Yeah.
a
I
lot of,
remember looking at flights between March and May occasionally, because we were continuing to fly people out for interviews, and it was dramatic how much the prices dropped. And we would look at flights maybe a week out for an interview for a site visit, and they'd be $90.
yeah.
Just insane. Normally it's 500 maybe for a typical flight like that. But I don't mean to get off topic. It just that's intriguing to me. So
Yeah.
so and it is a little on topic, because my next question is, do you plan to also do some type of commute now from Phoenix to southern New Mexico?
Yeah, that would be the same. So,
Okay.
and
Okay.
to answer what you're probably wondering, is, okay, hey, why don't you just get a job here in Phoenix,
Mhm.
metro area? Most of the derm practices here are owned by private equity. And that's when I came back to Arizona, I worked for private equity, and it's just a completely different experience than working for a private individual. Some of the things they ask you to do, you're capped on what you can earn, the amount of patients you see, they micromanage everything that you do. At least my experience I had with that, and a lot of the providers that I know in the metro Phoenix area, physician, dermatologists, and NP and PAs otherwise aren't necessarily crazy about the private equities here. So I've kind of been there, done that. So it's not something I would love to be here, but it's just not something that has really, the opportunity just doesn't exist for like what I'm looking for to match here.
Sure.
So
Sure. I
it's,
can appreciate that.
you make the choice. You either put up with something, or take something that's not really your ideal, or you seek out the opportunity but realize you're going to have to travel or commute to do it.
Right,
So
right, absolutely.
what it
Yeah, I
is.
mean, again, I mean, I applaud you for, kind of holding out, because most people would just compromise. They'd just say, well, it's not what I want to do, or it's not in the situation or setting that I want, and just take whatever they can get.
Right.
And naturally, what do? You get a provider who's not really producing at the level that they could or would or should, right? Because they're not happy, they're not satisfied. So
Yeah.
um, that's very admirable. So congrats to you.
Thank
And I don't really have any issues. Ultimately, I'm not the one making the hire, but obviously, I'm sure you've experienced some employers are going to be a little nervous about that.
Sure.
And I guess certainly you've proven that you can do it even on a long-term basis. How would you feel about making a long-term commitment with the employer, either via contract or some other, commitment period?
I mean, that's not really an issue, because again, I don't know too many that are saying, hey, can we bring you on month to month? They're going to,
Sure. Yeah.
let's play it by ear. I mean, most things are at will in some form or another. If you don't show up, they're not going to, not going to keep you. If they don't pay you, you're not going to show up. So, I mean, it's
Sure.
paper or no paper. I mean, it's, most people, you've got to have something there. So,
Mm, yeah. Well, I know I've asked you a lot of questions, and I have more, but
sure.
I want to turn the mic over to you a little bit here. Obviously, a little bit already, and I'm assuming that you're interested at least enough that we're on this discussion and on this call
Sure.
now. What immediate questions can I answer for you? What's most important for you to know here, Ryan?
Um, I guess first off, is it if granted, I don't know what you can disclose and what you can't, but I guess you'll tell me.
Yep.
Um, is this individual or company a privately owned individual office, or is this a private equity based
This is a private clinic. So let me give you a quick overview of kind of the current situation here, and we can get into maybe some of the practice details. So the owner of this practice is a physician. His name is Dr. Timothy Frost, and he is actually an otolaryngologist. So he ran an ENT practice for many, many years successfully in this community, and is retired at a young age, in my opinion. And instead of shutting down the practice, he decided to convert it to a dermatology practice, as this particular community does not have any derm at all. I mean, no one. The hospital doesn't employ anybody. They don't want to. And when Dr. Frost said, "Hey, we're going to kind of we're gonna create our own practice," they said, "Great, you can have it." So they brought on a nurse practitioner to run the practice, and I want to say that was probably July of last year, and I think she's met expectations, but they're looking for a bit more. And so this is the point where I can't tell you everything, but that what they're looking for is somebody who can be a stabilizing force in this practice. Just as you've explained, most of the derm practices in the country are owned by large franchises or PE, or are part of a large conglomerate, right? There's very few private practices left, and what I love about the situation is that you have the backing and the support of an established physician, both financially and just the general wherewithal, if you will. But you have an opportunity here to almost hang a shingle with none of the exposure, right? They're supporting you in every way possible, and wanting you to succeed, and they're looking at you to drive that bus, which, again, I mean, how many of those types of opportunities exist? Very few, if any. So I love that, and I love representing the opportunity because of the potential that this holds. And based on your commentary earlier, the fact that you want to work in an autonomous environment, I can't think of anything more autonomous than this, running your own practice. So does that answer some of your questions?
Yeah. So is he a local from Las Cruces originally, or when he
Yes,
established
and
that?
actually, I apologize. The clinic is technically located in Alamogordo, New Mexico, which is
Okay.
just east of Las Cruces. It's about 70 miles north of El Paso. So
Okay.
I've been there twice previously, most recently in 2018, and you can make the drive from El Paso to Alamogordo in an hour. So
Okay. And I'm
from
assuming,
the airport, because I flew in from Dallas. So
okay. I'm
I'm in,
assuming obviously El Paso is the largest major city closest to that.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure.
Okay.
So, and Las Cruces has we'll just put it this way. If you're going to make the drive, most people will end up going to El Paso, just because it is a metropolitan city, whereas Las Cruces is really just urban. And Alamogordo proper, again, since you're not living there, I can't imagine that there's anything lacking for you, right? Um, the community itself is around 30,000 people, and has a presence and a feel of much larger than that. I remember my first time that I visited in 2012. I thought, wow, it's a lot bigger than I expected.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
because they're pulling in from outlying communities. So, because otherwise you have to go all the way across White Sands to get to Las Cruces. So they pull everything from the west of the missile base, and Alamogordo pulls everything from the east, northeast, and southeast. If you look at a map, you'll see what I mean. But
Okay.
yeah, apologize. So yes, he's local
Okay.
to Alamogordo and still lives there.
What would you say the volume potential is there for that here? Because I know.
Unlimited. I mean, I'm not trying to blow smoke. I mean, it is. I think between you and I, again, since I consider myself a bit of an advocate for advanced practice providers, this is not an environment that would ever be exploitative in nature, nor would they ask for unreasonable production from you. As a matter of fact, I already know their long-term plans with the practice, and it does not involve, milking you to death or the next person that comes in. They need somebody who, again, can be that foundational element and help this practice stabilize for the community's benefit. With a lack of dermatological services in the direct community, you've got people making that commute to Las Cruces, which is almost an hour itself,
Okay.
and that's just that's not good. It's not good for anybody. So the need is there, and the reality is, again, back to kind of what I said is, growing your own practice and your own program. How many patients a day do you want to see? If you want to make as much money as humanly possible, you're probably going to have to see more than 15 patients a day, right?
Yeah,
It won't be
100%.
70, and it won't even be 40, but we all know that if you're seeing, one patient an hour, you're probably not paying the bills.
No,
So
you're not. Yeah. I guess the only other questions come to mind. What is the patient demographics of that area predominantly?
sure. It's heavily Hispanic, I don't know the exact percentages. There's a lot of good websites out there. I use city data a lot, but obviously, being in southern New Mexico and bordering, both Texas and Mexico, there's a heavy Hispanic culture and heritage there, as well as obviously Native American too. I mean, that's prevalent throughout New Mexico and Arizona, as you know.
Right.
So,
I guess maybe more what I meant to ask was as far as insurance, is it
oh,
commercial insurance, Medicare, is it Medicaid? What is the?
I feel bad that I don't know the exact answer to that, and I don't. My understanding is that it's probably a pretty fair share of private pay. The community is not massively underserved in terms of Medicaid, Medicare. It's not an MUA or anything like that. But naturally, I think it's probably slightly higher than maybe a traditional affluent community somewhere else. So and again, I know that's not an exact percentage, but there are going to be some Medicaid, Medicare type patients, but it's not like it's 80% of the practice or anything like that.
Okay. Okay. I guess the only other immediate question other two questions I would have, what EMR do they have there?
Mm. It's the dermatology one here. Let me pull up the profile
Emma?
real quick. Let's see here. Yeah, EMA.
Okay. Yep.
I'm assuming you're familiar with it.
I've used it for years, so yeah, it's the best one there is,
Yeah,
hands
yeah.
down. So
Awesome, awesome. By the way, I forgot to ask you, you mentioned that the current practices that you're working at is being acquired.
Mhm.
Do you know what the time frame is around that?
That should be, my understanding is probably should be by the end of June.
Okay. So you've got 7 weeks to find a new position, 8 weeks. Is that right?
Yeah, more or less.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, yeah, I mean, like with this opportunity, I guess if you were to ask that question, I mean, the biggest hurdle with me is just I need to get I don't have a New Mexico license. I'd have to get a
Sure.
New Mexico license. That's the biggest thing impeding my time frame. But yeah, other than that, it should roughly be 7 or 8 weeks is when that's going to be sold. So
Okay.
depending on the needs of the opportunity, there's some flexibility there. So
Sure, sure. Yeah, and I wasn't trying to go there. I mean, we all know this isn't going to happen overnight, but
sure.
they are able to to wait for you to achieve New Mexico licensure and any other credentialing that's needed. So I was just kind of curious, if they're selling the practice next week or the end of the year, right? Because it can be
Yeah,
all over the place. But
yeah,
um,
that's roughly, it should be, end of June.
okay, okay. How long have you been looking, by the way, Ryan?
I've just started,
Okay,
recently, yeah.
like
So
like Friday.
yeah, probably in the last week or so,
Okay,
so it's kind of, I'm not really I'm looking, but I'm also looking for the right fit. So I'm not in a rush, but I'm starting that due diligence process.
no, that's smart. You don't want to be, scrambling last minute to try to find something and then have to compromise. So, um, sorry, it's definitely been a Monday. And it's 5:30 in Dallas, so it's already been a 12-hour day for me. You have to excuse me.
Yeah.
So, I'm curious because I know we've talked about already kind of like the traditional marketplace, but you've only been looking for a week, obviously not been on the market for a month or 6 months. I mean, what are you seeing right now out there? What's kind of the run? What's the run of the mill stuff?
In terms of what,
Dermatology roles, yeah, yeah.
you mean how many jobs or how,
No,
what
no,
kind of
just I mean,
roles or?
what's your feedback in the market right now as far as what you've seen?
Oh, I mean, dermatology's always been the most competitive, there's, everybody wants to get into derm,
Mm,
it's,
that's for sure.
no call, no weekends. I mean, that's never changed. That's always been that way. So, I mean, as far as the opportunities themselves, there's always opportunities. If you got, experience, you're going to get two schools. Some of the private equities want new grads because they can get them cheap. And then
Mm,
you've got some people that value experience,
sure,
or they only want experience. And that's no
sure,
different today. You still have those two schools of thoughts. There's still lots of opportunities out there. There's lots of competition, but
mm,
if you know your stuff and you provide good care and you work hard, I mean, you can always find a job. So
sure,
that's been that way for the past 20 years. So I haven't found that to be anything different. But again, it's just really trying to find that right opportunity. Finding an opportunity is not difficult. It's finding the
mm,
the right one that makes the right balance. That's more important.
sure.
With that.
Yeah. Well, again, with your amount of experience credentials, I'm sure that you are able to be a bit choosier than most people, unless it's a situation where they're exclusively looking for new grads to,
Right.
use and abuse, if you will. So let's get into, I want to just build some of the routine questions here for the client. They may not get a chance to listen to all of this. So I want to kind of hit some of the strengths and obviously there's no doubt or concern you can do the job. It's not like you ran, practices in primary care and occasionally had some derm exposure, right? So,
No.
please don't take any of my questions as a questioning of your capability here, Ryan. But I want to start if you're ready.
Sure. Sure. Yeah.
Okay. What reasons would you give to an employer to hire you? Why would they want to hire you?
Experience, hard worker, dedication, dependability, um, business minded. Um, it's integrity. I say what I mean when I say what I mean. That's hard to find
Mm,
these days. And again, it depends on the need of the employer, because what one employer may value, another one may not. Like I
sure.
said, if someone values like, hey, I want to have a good reputation, but I also want to make money, I'm good at those things. If someone said ultimately, hey, we care less about uh, earning money and more about spending half an hour with every single patient, that usually doesn't translate. You can do that, but you're usually not going to be making the income someone or the provider wants. So it depends on the needs of what someone wants to,
Sure.
but
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I appreciate that you're, kind of cognizant of that, right? What would you say your strongest clinical skills are? Not generic, like, hey, yeah, I'm, attentive or, detail minded. What clinical skills are your strongest?
a couple of things on that. I mean, medical surgical is probably what 90% of my day in and day out experience is.
Mm,
10% is aesthetics, but I'm good at balancing all of that. I'd never do anything that's unnecessary for a patient, but I'm always good about keeping the business aspect of it in mind as well. If something, for example, if someone comes in for a basic skin exam, yes, I'm going to perform and do a thorough skin exam, but it's not just about that. It's also about, building rapport with the patient so they want to come back with you. As a nurse practitioner working autonomously, my competition has always been against other dermatologists, and I have to
mm,
work twice as hard because a lot of dermatologists, they like NPs and PAs if you work for them.
Sure.
But if you
Sure.
are in the same community, you're competition, and they don't like that. So you always have to work harder to make that impression with the patient, because maybe the only reason they're coming to see you is because, hey, you could get in quicker to see them. So you have to win them over, win the reputation. And then the other part of that is during that skin exam, not only keeping that in mind, it's also, hey, you've got a few, I'm just going to give you an example, like you've got some brown splotching here. Does that bother you? There's also some bleaching creams and things we could do about that if that bothers you. And they're like, yeah, actually there is. And then that leads into a conversation about Botox, or it's, hey, you've got 3 spots that look suspicious. And again, if you aren't cognizant of what insurances pay or reimburse and how to do that, I've seen lots of providers over the years, they'll just do everything at that visit because, hey, I want to try to maximize what I think my bonus is going to be, not realizing, hey, after that second one, you're only getting paid 50% or not at all, and so
Right.
forth. So
Sure.
probably just my strong suit would just be that I'm good at putting the full package together, from the business aspect, keeping reputation in mind, and then trying to be efficient at the same time. I'm usually always on time, and good at not, hey, you're running half an hour behind. That's never been a forte of mine. I've always,
Sure.
so.
Generically, what are your strongest skills, Ryan?
Okay, so I guess I probably gave you too thorough of an answer for that first.
That's okay. No. There's no right or wrong. There's no right or wrong. So
Generically, I'm personable with people one-on-one. I'm not going to be in the room storytelling for half an hour. I'm more, friendly, but to business, get done what they need to have, done. Like say, if time efficiency. I'm good at, managing staff when I've been in those roles of, trying to keep things, together and not getting, I don't get panicked or been out of shape over, things that come up, so I can
sure.
even keel. So,
Anything else you'd like to add?
um, and like I say, generically, the Emma, I've got a lot of experience with Emma, as well. So that's something that, got a good background on that. I guess in this case, I have in the past had a lot of experience working with ENTs before,
Oh, really?
the things. Yeah. So in
I
our,
might have missed that on your resume. I'm sorry. Tell me. It's not really important, but I'm curious now.
not working for an ENT, but in smaller communities where the nearest Mohs surgeon is a couple hours away, I had good working relationships with an ENT in, particular. So
Okay.
he would send me a lot of, medical surgical cases, and then certain, ones I would refer to him, for that. So it was good for his business, good for ours. We had a good working relationship and everything, so that's
Interesting. All right, now I got a heavy question for you.
sure.
What what is your practice philosophy?
Work hard, play hard, I guess.
That's getting chopped for sure. No, I'm kidding. No, your delivery of medicine. What do you stand by?
I'm a good listener, so I'm not one that I'm an active listener. So if somebody comes in, that's something I don't ever get feedback from patients on of, oh, he didn't listen to anything I had to say, or he talked over the top of me, or he, didn't explain things thoroughly, to me. You're always going to have some patients that, don't realize, hey, when you've been doing this day in and day out for many, many years, and it's usually always related to their bill that they get. But sometimes, something that only takes 7 minutes, and you've answered all of their questions and explained everything, there are those certain patients that still feel like, hey, I'm
Yeah,
here, I should be getting 20 minutes, even if we're talking about football game or
yeah,
whatever else. So
yeah. It's punishment for being good at your job.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, but for the most part, yeah, I'm good at listening to people. I try to thoroughly explain things and um, be pleasant and then gentle, too. Nobody likes getting rammed with a stinging, numbing shot for a procedure. So I'm, gentle too with procedures and things. So
Okay, excellent. What do you love most about your work, Ryan?
um there's several answers to that. I mean, one, I like making a good living, so that's very important to me because I like to have fun. I like to do things, so I like to work hard and earn revenue to enjoy the rest of my life. So that's
Mm,
one thing that's important. As far as the actual part with patients, I do like skin. I like that it's visual. I like that you can get, for the most part, most patients better quickly. I like seeing a lot of variety. I like that you're not having to give too often, negative news like, hey,
mm,
you've got cancer, you've got X amount of time to live. That's, it's a relatively pleasant conversation with patients and you're helping them. You get to see improvement. They like it. That's very rewarding. Um, and then outside of that, it's just, I'd say dermatology is definitely something that's kind of respected, amongst people. You say, hey, I work in dermatology. They're like, oh, that's really interesting. Hey, could you tell me about this? Or, it's it's a
sure,
respected profession. So
sure.
I
What professions are not respected?
probably tax collectors, bill
I'm
collectors,
just messing with you.
politicians.
Yeah, right. Oh, geez, that's a slippery slope there. Um, what would you find is most challenging about your work?
Oh, hands down, dealing with insurance,
Mm,
companies, telling you, having to wait for your money, when you do a service. I mean, it can be 30 to 90 days, and then having to involve, it's part of it, but just dealing with billing companies and everybody nickeling, diming you to death. And nowadays it's, social media, it's
mm,
like one advantage that newer, I shouldn't say newer, more established practices have is you already have established clientele as opposed to a completely brand new client base. Now in with Google and Facebook, it's a pay to play environment. So it's not like years ago where you could just put an ad in the phone book and
mm.
or say, hey, I'm here, and you could be busy. you know it's nowadays it's totally different. So some of that doesn't apply to an established practice, but
Right.
in general it's dealing with just all the different vendors you have to have in order to just do the basic job and waiting to get paid. It's a pain.
Sure.
So
Well, that won't be an issue here. So,
good.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This
Yeah.
is this is a if you build it, they will come situation. So, um, what would you say you are seeking in your next position?
Honestly, I would love to have more of like I had with my first job in my career. I'm looking for autonomy. I'm looking to be able to make a difference, to be not on paper a partner, but a partner in more of the sense of, hey, you're doing a good job. I recognize what you're doing. I'm going to reward you, you know, financially because, if I'm helping to make the owner a lot of money, just the acknowledgement of like, hey, you're really helping me. You're really keeping that in line. I'm going to reward you as well. That's basically what I had with that first setup, and it worked great. I mean, nobody goes into one of these things that's realistic and smart. The owner has to make money. If you're not making money, it doesn't make sense.
Right.
And you're not going to pay anybody more than they're worth just because they're a nice guy.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
you're going to
Sure.
reward somebody, if they're making you money and you're happen to be easy to get along with and they're not giving you any headache at the end of the day or grief, it's like, I like you. You're a good guy,
Yeah.
or a good gal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Um, so why are you interested in this job?
Honestly, in the ad, the fact that it said it was autonomous, was one thing that caught my eye.
Mhm.
Um, I have not been to well, I know you said it's another town, but at least
Yeah,
on the ad, it said,
Alamogordo.
yeah, Las Cruces. So like, I have not been to either, but I know at least Las Cruces is from El Paso is a close little hop
Oh yeah,
flight
yeah.
from here.
And it's not much different between the two. I mean, it's, because that speed limit's like 70 or 75, so you can make it up quick. So I've made that drive twice, and it's an easy commute. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Because it's just straight up one highway. So,
Yeah.
but okay, so proximity to El Paso, or just generic geographic location as an appeal.
It's appealing because it's not somewhere cold and snowy. That's appealing, but the proximity is part of it. The fact that it's from what you're telling me now, maybe I didn't know this at the beginning or wasn't unsure about, having volume to be able to see, you know, uh, patients as many as like what you want to see. That's appealing.
Mhm.
I honestly like working for an individual as opposed to private equity. Private equity just left a sour taste. My man, most people I know, they don't like it. I mean, unless you're an owner and you're selling,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
makes sense. But
yeah. They like it.
other, if they're out, that's great. But if
Mhm.
you're hanging around, everybody else is like, oh, great. Now
Right.
we have to stick around. But
No, I get it, and I totally understand. So, um, anything else that either made this stick out, or you go, wow, this is worth pursuit.
those are the big things,
Okay.
again, at least the posted, salary is lower than some of the other
Mhm.
uh, positions that are available out there for experience or with busier things. But again, sometimes you don't know on these Indeed ads if what you see is fixed or like set in stone, or if it's like, hey, most people only want to see 20 to 25 people a day, but if you're
Sure.
willing to see more, hey, it's here and we can do it. So I wasn't sure how much of that was set in stone either, but
Sure.
um,
It,
from
it's
what you're
def
telling
it's
me,
it is the latter. I mean, there's and at the end of the call, like I said, we'll talk about some of the stuff off the record, and I'll explain to you exactly how the compensation plays out. But I will tell you very quickly that there is productivity bonuses available, and that I think if you want to work hard, you can exceed the upward number that was posted. So,
okay, okay.
um, how would you describe? I mean, obviously, you and I have interacted, but somebody who hasn't met you, right? How would you describe your personality?
I'm a one-on-one. It's funny because for fun, recently somebody gave me one of these behavioral or predictive behavioral index test things
Yeah,
to take, and it was, I don't know if you're familiar with those, but it was,
I've taken a couple. Yeah, they're always kind of neat.
and I can tell you the thing was spot on. I took that, I was like, wow, okay. I just hand it to somebody and be like, here you go, read that and I'll be back and you can tell me in 5 minutes if it matches. But
That's funny.
not having that, yeah, I'm definitely a one-on-one kind of person. I'm not a center of attention kind of person. I'm more reserved. I think before I act. I like to cut up and joke around, but professionally, like I say, I'm very ambitious and very hardworking. If you give me a goal or a task, I'm going to get it done. But I also realize if something, you shouldn't go a certain place or something doesn't make sense, I'm not going to do something that shouldn't be, done. That's going to put something, in jeopardy or anything like that either.
Mm,
But
I understand.
um, I don't know if that's what you were wanting to know
That's
in
helpful. Yes.
general. Okay.
What do you want the practice to know about you that's not on your resume, not in your cover letter, and that I haven't asked you yet?
I get, and again, I guess you're going to probably tell me this more towards the end, but
Yeah.
if
Yeah.
if they're looking for someone that they can just have in there to, that they don't have to worry about the day in and day out, that's going to be a hard worker and wants to build not only the reputation, but also their revenue. They're not going to find a harder worker than me.
Okay.
And somebody they don't have to worry about. My thing is, we would talk towards the end, I'll work my ass off for things. And the fact that I commute back and forth across the country every day for something, proves my diligence to something when set to task. It's just with anything, I do that because practices, recognize the, contribution I make, and then they reward me for that. And I, reward, they see that in return by the effort that I put in and how I'm conscious of everything. And then again, the more, some of those practices, like the very first one I worked for, he was good at like saying, hey, here is what's coming in and this is what we need to do better at, or hey, can we get more revenue here or there? It wasn't like some places like that was a completely closed off thing that you
Right.
had no idea, or they wouldn't share that in a way, so it's hard to improve a practice's bottom line if they don't even pay attention to their own bottom line.
Sure.
Um,
It sounds like you had a really special experience with that practice, and that you were treated almost like a partner,
yeah,
and they looked to you for guidance and advice, and shared with you, hey, we think that we can boost our revenue by $500,000 a year by promoting additional aesthetic type products, or something to that effect, right?
yeah, yeah.
So I'm just, I'm making up a situation, but you were involved at a high level in the health, well-being, and direction of the practice,
right. Yeah.
and you want more of that.
Yeah, I liked it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. I liked it. It was a good setup.
Mm,
So
sure.
I kind of felt like some of the stops along the way, I was trying to find that same thing and was a little appointed that it wasn't readily able to be found the same way, and it's, as you said, there's fewer and fewer privately owned things, and finding, you know, goals that, are a similar alignment like that, it's, you just got to find the right fit. So
I mean, listen, again, I've been doing this a long time. These positions are extremely rare, um, or they come with a lot of baggage, right?
yep.
And the stability, health, and everything else that you are worried about is always in question, right? And obviously, I know some of these things that you don't know yet, and you will uncover in time. But I don't want to get off topic, but I think you'll find that maybe some of the obvious concerns or questionable things are solid here, and the foundation is good. This is a clinic that needs a provider like you, Ryan, and with a provider like you, the potential is limitless, or unlimited, excuse me. I have no doubt in my mind about that, and I'm blown away that the community has not produced some type of dermatology service up to this point, because it's needed, it's there. So
How do you feel, or does he feel about, like in Las Cruces? Like, I was just, you always do your little research beforehand. So I see that Epiphany is there in Las Cruces. So have they not, like,
so my guess is, Epiphany just doesn't care. They're busy enough as it is, or they don't know, right? Um, that's a largely female dominated practice, as I'm sure you're aware. And maybe they figure we don't want any of the market in Alamogordo, it's not worth it, or again, who knows? I don't know that practice other than the people that work there. So
okay. Yeah, I was just curious because I have found, over the years, you definitely, at least I should say here in Phoenix,
Mhm.
it is a very competitive marketplace, and they are circling, looking for practices to pluck to acquire, and
Ah,
it is anything they're looking to do to get
I mean,
ahead. Or
Phoenix is a cutthroat market for all healthcare specialties, though. I mean, I told you about my client Sun Life. I mean, man, I've been recruiting to the Phoenix market off and on for over a decade, and a lot of outlying communities too that are on the periphery. And uh, the amount of competition locally, regionally, and nationally is insane. I mean, it's one of the most competitive markets in the country. People don't realize it. So, and I'm sure you've experienced it. I mean, as strong of a provider as you are, you're not a shoe in for any derm role there because you've got stiff competition too, right? It's crazy.
yeah,
So,
it is.
you're a big fish in a big pond. So,
Yep, you got it.
but so I know we've talked a little bit about your prior experiences and let me just ask you, like, where do you want to be patient volume wise? Like, I understand you work hard and you're task oriented and you don't mind being busy, but where's your comfort zone? Where's your sweet spot?
I can answer that probably a different way. That's
Okay.
usually based on revenue.
Also,
Well, because obviously, if someone says, hey, you can make what you want to make based on how hard you're willing to work, I'm just making this up. For example, I mean, if you're given a realistic, thing like, hey, you can do that, but if the practice doesn't have the volume to support it, it doesn't matter if you were given hypothetically a 50% productivity bonus, because you're never going to see it. And if they
sure.
control the amount of volume you have, well, guess what? You're never going to see it.
Mm,
So that doesn't really necessarily mean much. And then, and the only way that you're generally going to be getting higher, I should say higher than average salaries, is if the volume is there to support it, where it makes sense on paper.
Sure.
So there's usually some balance of that. So, and then there is a cap on what you can realistically see. So,
Mm,
the practice I was in for 10 years, I was seeing like 50, 55 patients a day for years.
hmm
The majority of practices don't have that kind of volume to be able to give you that. So a lot of practices I've seen anywhere from 30 to 40 patients, because that's what they have.
Sure.
And like the private equity, they wouldn't let you see more than 30 if you wanted it. I'll give you an
Wow.
example. Because, what's funny is you hear stereotypically some of the bad press about, hey, they want you to do this or that that's unethical, or it's all about the bottom line.
hmm
I didn't have that experience with that particular private equity. It was, when I was brought on, I said, hey, I want to work hard, I want to do that. And they're like, okay. So they gave me, a higher than average, salary, nationwide.
hmm
But then, it was seeing 30, patients, which there was a couple providers there, which is, pretty good for having a few providers. But then I was like, hey, I'd like to be busier.
Mm,
That never came. And then we had a provider that left. And I said, hey, before you do anything, I'd like to have that volume. That was not even a discussion. It was, nope, they preferred to have someone else, because what they wanted at the end of the day is they only wanted people seeing no more than 30 people, so they could control exactly what revenue. So in essence, you never made a bonus ever. You just got your salary. And
wow.
then the ones that had lower salaries, they would get a bonus, but then they would control the amount of patients they would see, so that everybody only saw 30 max, and they cared more about their online reviews, because their whole goal was to try to acquire more practices so they could turn around and sell to another private equity. So, you know,
Okay. Well, I think we all know what's going on there. So,
right.
interesting. Hey, I forgot to ask you, and this kind of ties in with your question both about patient volume and revenue generation.
Sure.
Tell me about your experience, if any, with radiation therapy.
Um, I personally have not done it. I mean, I worked in one practice when I would rotate to at Alliance at one of the satellite offices, that they had that service, but they actually had like a radiation company come in
Hmm.
to the office and in essence perform it for them.
Okay.
So nobody in the office was physically doing it. It's just, I'm assuming it was a mutual arrangement, like, I don't know the
Yeah,
exact
yeah. It's just
details,
it's a
but
contracted service essentially.
right.
So,
Yep.
they do have that service in house, and it is a large revenue generator, but also a big part of I guess their foundational services there. It's an image guided superficial radiation for non-melanoma cancer, and I think it's been huge for them. So that's certainly something that would be a part of your repertoire there.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, you can ignore that. I don't know what's going on. I mean, this thing's hard mounted, and maybe it just wants to take the day off. But
Yeah.
so, any comments or thoughts about that?
No, I mean, if something's a good revenue generator, I mean, there's a dermatologist in the city where I work at now, and her husband is an interventional radiologist. So she refers all of her basal and squamous cell carcinomas, to him for
Mhm.
superficial radiation therapy, and it makes sense because, the revenue generated is much higher than what you're getting with Mohs, or certainly with, C&D or excision in the office.
Sure,
So
sure. Well, and their current nurse practitioner is doing that now, so I don't, it's not like it's a
right,
far-fetched thing, right?
right.
So,
No.
okay. Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and turn the recording off. Bear with me 1 second here, and